Yeah, I'm Kevin. Along with our team, released DeepSqueak about 6 years ago, and in the intervening 6 years, DeepSqueak has gone through a series of development changes that um, have kind of transformed it into a all-purpose bioacoustics analysis suite. And we haven't really released any kind of, papers or information describing that. So I thought I'd do something today, which is generally ill-advised, and that's to try to give a live software demo and show off kind of how quick and easy it is to use DeepSqueak to analyze a data set of vocalizations. I'll just jump right into it. Really, all you need to start working with DeepSqueak is DeepSqueak and MATLAB, and then a folder for your audio files in a project and a folder to keep all of your detections. The data set I'm going to talk about today is just a small data set with 10 audio files and about 5,000 mouse ultrasonic vocalizations, all from a kind of open source repository from MouseTube, just for ease of showing things off here. So to talk about kind of the manual features, the first thing you can do with DeepSqueak is just take any audio file and load it in. DeepSqueak will display kind of three different screens. One is a zoomed in version of your audio, and then the second is something we call a page file, and the third is a navigation of the entire file. And all of these are, easy to click around to move through. And then for new audio files, you can manually start boxing calls and work your way through huge files. If you were working with, say, a new species, this would be necessary so that you could eventually train a new neural network to detect calls automatically. Also, for the manual features, we have things like adding custom labels. So if you were crazy enough to want to manually label all of your thousands of calls, you can create key shortcuts and pick calls and label them manually. Like I said, one of the main features of being able to do all this manual boxing and labeling is that you can train new neural networks. So with DeepSqueak, that's pretty easy. You just go to Tools, Network Training, and create detection network images. You can select a single detection file or as many detection files as you want and create images from it. We find that if you have, rodent vocalizations that are similar to what DeepSqueak's used to seeing, but say your files are a little different, adding something like 500 or 1,000 calls and retraining one of the current neural networks works well. If you have something new, like we recently had spider monkeys on psilocybin from the NIH, we were able to train kind of new neural networks for those in maybe 1,000, 2,000 calls. Yeah, DeepSqueak will automatically generate images and save them and let you then train neural networks from them. The generation of these images is kind of like an open question. What's the best way to do it? The new version of DeepSqueak basically has a function that's hidden under the scenes that if you're a power user, you could manipulate that function to generate images using kind of whatever kind of image scaling you want. And now it will actually save that image scaling along with the newly trained neural networks so that if you do end up changing things, basically the network will be able to create the images the same way for detection, because whatever you do to create the images for training, you have to create the images in a similar manner for detection. Okay, that's the kind of manual focus. So what I want to talk about next is the automatic features. This is basically what I think everyone here would want to use. So DeepSqueak originally came with, I think, 3 different detection networks for mice, rats, and for long rat calls. In the last year or so, we've developed some new neural networks that use some new image generation, like I said, things that are much more robust to noise and particularly horizontal, like short band. So like the buzzing of lights or monitors that cause 50 kilohertz lines in your calls are no longer quite as annoying. What I think most people don't pick up right away on, though, is that you don't have to just use one neural network. So most commonly, we'll do things with the multi-detect button that lets you choose as many calls as you want, excuse me, as many audio files as you want at once. Um, but it also lets you, excuse me, pick as many neural networks as you want at once. So you can record, excuse me, detect with both, say, the rat and mouse network, even if you're just working with mouse calls. Often one will just sort of work better than the other. And a common issue with all of these object detector-based approaches is that they miss objects sometimes. And so often doing things with two networks will mitigate that. You'll get, more likely. So although I have, I think, all mouse calls in the current data set, I detected them yesterday with both the rat and mouse networks. I will not actually hit detect here. On my laptop, these things run at maybe 10 times real time using a good GPU, something like a 4080 or a 5090, which we have at the lab. You'll detect at maybe 25 or 30 times real time. So you can get through a lot of data really fast, even if you're using multiple detection networks. All right. Once you have your calls detected, they'll all show up in this little detected slot here. These detection files are basically just MATLAB like workspace saves, and they contain all the information about where the calls are in the audio file. You can then load any individual one. Oh, this is something that's new for the new version of DeepSqueak, which is that if you start manually boxing things or changing files, it'll recognize that you did that, and it'll try to have you save your work so you don't accidentally oversave it. But I'll hit cancel anyways, because we don't need to save what we did before. All right, so these are all automatically detected yesterday with no manual intervention yet. They also have labels on them from clustering, which I'll go over in a little bit. But for now, ignore those. Yeah, and basically, whenever you have new calls loaded in, you can manually go through the file. You can look at every individual one. You can jump around. If you notice something wrong, like here it didn't capture the entire call, you can manipulate any individual box. We find that on very, very large data sets, we kind of tend to
Sorry, Kevin, are you there?
Sorry, we have some technical issues, so we will just wait until Kevin join us again.
Apparently, a live demo was actually not. Maybe it could be the issue. Let's see if Kevin is able to rejoin us. Okay, hi, you're back.
Hey, so it turns out the internet in Seattle went out. I apologize about that. It's not just my house, but the entire
Wow, okay.
local fiber went down. So I don't think my phone will have the capacity to stream the video screen here. I apologize about that.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely not any of your fault. And I guess I was laughing it was probably the live demo. Being,
Like I said, anytime
not
you
so
try
good
a live demo, it's gonna go wrong. At least DeepSqueak didn't break it.
Okay, so sorry that happened. Maybe still we have some questions, even though
Yeah, it's
okay, there are some.
I'll keep an eye on this in case the internet comes back on while I'm still scheduled here. Oh wait,
Sure.
here, wait.
We have some questions popping up. Is the
Yeah.
internet back on?
Okay. Am I back? Am I back on?
It's loading. Yes, you're back on.
Holy cow. All right. Okay, I will try to just jump forward and move kind of fast then. Sorry, and thank you all for that. I'm not sure what happened. Somebody hit a telephone pole or something around here. Great. So, like was mentioned in the Metris talk, I think what a lot of people want to do with this data is cluster and categorize USVs. And we've taken kind of a different approach to clustering and categorization. That approach basically is to use unsupervised clustering. So I think our general attitude is that rodent vocalizations in particular don't fit into perfectly discrete categories. Like I mentioned before, they tend to use these different kind of like call components, like sweeping up or down, trills, inverted U shapes, regular U shapes. But they also make those in kind of like every twist and shape and pattern and version of them. And so what we like to do is for a single experiment, use unsupervised clustering to get some number of call categories that are kind of unbiased by the experimenter. And then we can ask questions about whether two groups are making them at different rates or at different times, different quantities, that sort of thing. And so it's not perfectly translatable across labs, but within an experiment, you can get a really good idea of what the animals are doing. And so for us, we have something called tools, call classification, and then unsupervised clustering. There are lots and lots of methods to do this, but the current method we recommend is to use something called a variational autoencoder, which is a neural network designed to take an image and reduce that image to a small set of latent features, basically what the neural network thinks it needs to reconstruct that image. And you can take those latent features along with some known call contour parameters like the frequency and shape and use that for clustering. One thing that's really convenient about DeepSqueak is that once you've done this, you can save the model and you can cluster again from an existing model. So here I'll take the one I made yesterday, the variational autoencoder model, and you can also take not the individual call files like this, but if you've already done clustering, you can take an extracted contours file, which is much faster, and load that. So here I'll load 5,000 calls and do clustering, hopefully in a matter of just a few seconds. When the software is finished with clustering, it brings up our new clustering GUI, which we've kind of finally got into some decent shape in the last year or so. So here we go. First thing it's going to do is show you all of the kind of top calls in each category. What is the centroid? What is it using as like kind of the most similar call to the category? And then here's the clustering GUI. So what's nice about this is it lets you look at every single cluster and every single call. If you highlight over a call, it'll tell you exactly what that call is. If you would like to rename a cluster, you can. So you can just name it up sweep. If you notice that you have a bunch of noise, you can left click on a call and it will turn red. That means it'll save that as noise. If you move to a new category and you think, oh, I don't know, this doesn't belong here, this should be somewhere else, you can right click and then move it to any other category. So really kind of like fully featured and capable of moving calls into the kind of clusters you're interested in. Like I said, there's a lot of variability in vocalizations like this, and I think what I'll do is show you an example of what that means. So you can hit save here when you're done, and it'll save all of your call clusters back to the original .met files so that you can export it later. If you want to, I'll say no to this because we already did it yesterday. If you want to visualize what these clusters look like and how similar they are to each other, DeepSqueak includes a feature to display things using a UMAP or a TSNE. This is really useful to say take two groups, a treatment group and a control group, and look at how they use calls in a different way. Say they're using much more of like the sweep calls or much less of the complex calls. You can do that. So I will use the variational autoencoder embeddings that we use to generate these, and I will color the calls based on their cluster or category. I'm just going to make a not giant image so that it doesn't take too long. Let's see, let's get a lot of calls in here. Like I said, you can do this from an existing model, so you're not training a new variational autoencoder every single time you do this. And here's our extracted contours from before. And yeah, basically the speed and comfort at which DeepSqueak works is dependent on both CPU for kind of the visualization and GPU for all of the deep learning type things. I'm using just like a normal laptop here. You can see it's still pretty snappy and easy. On our workstations at work, everything is extremely smooth and fast. It's finally optimized for MATLAB 2025. That took a little time because they made some pretty major changes in the jump between 2024 and 2025. But honestly, most of the time spent waiting for DeepSqueak to do something is waiting for it to load. But this actually already completed the entire TSNE calculation and is basically just trying to save the image, which takes a little while because it's a large image. So we can save that embeddings image, which is going to be the image. Here is the the call categories. Once you do this, you can resave your extracted contours. I'm not going to do it right now because saving takes a second, but it will save that with all of the actual embedding values so that if you wanted to load that later and make new graphs using those embeddings, you could. And so here, let's see if this looks nice. These are the clusters that we generated with automatic clustering and their kind of position in UMAP space. And like I mentioned, the animals make kind of like every combination of up and up a little less, and up that's low frequency, up that's high frequency, every version of a U. And so the clustering really has to kind of do its best to try to make sense and put up boundaries. And since we don't really believe that they are actual boundaries, for us it makes sense to do this kind of unsupervised approach and then use that to either share the variational autoencoder models or compare between groups, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think I'm getting close and running over time. The only other thing I'll mention is that we also have syntax analysis built in. So inside the call classification is syntax analysis. I will maybe just choose a single file here so that it runs kind of fast. But basically, you can take your two groups and ask, are they making different types of songs or call orders? You can set settings about bout duration and which call classes to exclude. While that's loading for the final images, I think that's about, oh, that was very fast. Yeah, so it'll give you your kind of like transition table, so which calls are transitioning to other calls. I won't save the transition table file here, and then it'll give you a kind of a network graph showing, again, these transition probabilities. And there's different groups of animals that like to repeat calls often are ones that like to transition, and you can get some insight into maybe if call song complexity is changing, that sort of thing. Yeah, and when you're totally done with the experiment, you can do file, import, export, and save a big Excel log that basically has every single call in it from your entire experiment. And basically everything we do after that is post-processing. So, you know, taking this file and merging it with your group IDs and your, you know, control versus experimental group, and then asking, you know, making graphs about differences, things like that. All that's handled outside of DeepSqueak, not within it. Great. Okay. I think that's probably enough talking.